So we've talked about some of the thinking that goes into lighting a scene. We've talked about luminance, and we've talked about foot candles, color temperature, three-point lighting, all these things. And we have certain tools that help us. Here we have a light meter that Roger Deakins has in his right hand, a light meter that's used by these two cinematographers. In a way, they're either showing their light meters off, or maybe they're having a duel here on this western street. Either way, they're looking to see where the initial light is coming from and how bright it is, so that the people who are operating the camera can adjust their f-stop or their iris so that it's either wide or small, so that it either blows out the shot or it narrows the light in the shot. So here we have an f-stop that's opened up pretty wide because they want the glare of the sun to be predominant for an artistic effect. They could be dealing with the water here and the reflection, and they might again want that reflection to blow out the scene, and they go with their light meter, and they'll see that it needs an f-stop of maybe 2 points, but these people might raise or lower it to get the effect they want. Here on the street, this road, this highway, this great shot of New Mexicana, I've got a wonderful contrast between the sky and the road is glaring a bit. It's really hot in the light, and it's so hot that the white lines just kind of disappear in this glare. And what we want to do is maybe we want to lower the f-stop to lessen the glare of the road, or leave it the way it is to achieve the high contrast. But the people with the light meter go out there and they'll tell us what kind of a reflection they're getting off the road so that we can adjust the f-stop on our camera, as we would when we're dealing with this car here, where we got the starburst light bouncing off the hood, and that again might be the artistic effect we want, but again it might be distracting. So we have to make a choice, and what we do is we measure the reflected light coming off that hood so that we can make a camera adjustment. The adjustment might be towards having a hood where there's no reflection like this car, so that it seems less startling but better put in contrast with the other cars. It's nice and smooth and even, and it looks like the right color temperature. So we're going to judge that the reflection off the hood of this car isn't enough to blow out the shot, and we're ready to roll. Here we have reflected light off this woman's face coming from the computer, but it's a cold reflected light, and it's dim enough so that we can see the background of the couch and the room. It adds depth. So if we measure this with a light meter, it's not going to give us an intense light reading, but it will tell us how much is reflected off her face so that we can widen the shot, widen the focus of the shot to include everything else, where we wouldn't want to do it here, where we have an intense light reflecting off this woman's face so that it glares out the background. We're gonna soften the background and rack the focus so that's not in focus. And what happens is, if I have a light meter, I'm going to measure the light bouncing off her face against the light that's directly coming in the background of the tunnel. Two different measurements that I'm going to get with my light meter. And we see that white ball there staring at us. That's what's going to get what we call the direct light. This light here, we call it the incident light, the direct light. The incident light is a light coming from the source directly to the light meter, the white recording ball in the light meter. Reflective light will take the source of the light and how it's reflecting off an object, and get the brilliance or the luminosity of that, and will be, of course, either different or sometimes it could be off a mirror accentuated, and we're going to measure that in a different way on a light meter. So here we have an example. The light source, the sun, we call it the incident light, the incidental light that comes directly from the source, reflected off the globe to the camera in the reflected light. So what happens if I take my light meter and I measure the light from the light source, it's going to be at a higher intensity than the reflected light. It's going to be maybe 56 versus 32. Here we have a light meter that's not using the white ball, which is going to take the incident light. It's turned sideways to get the reflected light, and it will measure the reflected light and suggest f-stops to balance what we get on the incident light. So the light meter takes reflected and direct light, gives us different readings that we then incorporate in the camera setting. And also on the light meter, if you look at that lower left side of the screen there, you'll see 24. The light meter is adjusted so that we're going to say shoot in 24 frames per second. It will tell us what kind of light will give a good picture for 24p or 24 frames per second, as opposed to if we're shooting more frames per second, maybe 30 frames, it then will adjust, because the faster our frames roll through, the more light we're going to need, and vice versa. The less frames that roll through, the less light we need, because it has more time to be saturated with the light. The faster the frames move, less time to take in the light, so we increase the light source. So that we get that measurement also on a light meter. So the light meter is taking our direct light, our reflected light, and it's also connecting to the camera, seeing how many frames per second, so that it can tell us what the lighting department needs to either add or subtract light with. When we're dealing with green screen and things like that, we're really talking a lot about reflected light. And what happens with the green screen, where we're going to drop in the background later on our computer, we need to make sure, since the green will be blocked out and we'll put another image on that space, it can't be reflecting on this person's trench coat, because if it is, then when we drop the image behind him, say we have him, he's in front of the Eiffel Tower or something, we drop it in post, that's going to be reflected right on his coat. He's going to see the Eiffel Tower is going to eat him a little bit. So we need to separate him from the green enough so that the green doesn't reflect on him, because whatever's going to be green is going to take on the new image. So we have to go with our light meter, go back there to see how much light's reflecting, so it's not reflecting too much. Here we see a gentleman with a light meter getting low tungsten light in an office scene, and he's measuring it out so that it's all balanced over this person's face, making sure that the f-stop on the camera, or the widening of the iris, is correct enough so that he's going to be in focus. Like this gentleman here with the light meter, he's taking direct light, but the backlight there, they're seeing that that's going to be more brightly lit than her face, but what they want to see is if they can balance off the glare that she's got on her forehead with the light in the background, and they'll adjust settings. So he might lift that light meter and say, whoa, that's way too hot, so let's take care of the light in the background, or let's refocus on her forehead. And you can see here with Audrey Hepburn and the late 50s, we've been using light meters all along. Of course, we haven't been as cool and suave as this gentleman who can use a light meter and a cigarette, smoke a cigarette at the same time. But we can see here that what he wants to do is he's looking for an effect where her face, because of our fill light, is going to be in the shade a bit, going to be shadowed. He's going to make sure that the reflection of what's on her face helps him out framing in the f-stop region on the camera. Here we have Wally Pfister doing the same thing in a courtroom with DiCaprio, and he is, if you can see the light, the way the light is, he's making sure the light is hitting, reflecting DiCaprio's right side, just like it is in the courtroom there, and he's measuring it so that the camera person again can get the reflection off DiCaprio's face without blowing it out. And here we have Roger Deakins on set with the Coen brothers, and Ethan and Joel are both examining what he's lighting here on the desk, and we can see that he's got his trusty light meter in his hand so that they can make all the adjustments on camera. And here later they shoot, and they've got a nice Coen brothers shot, and here we're using just one source for the incident light, this light in the upper right part of that cubicle, and that is going to light the rest of the scene. So it's in a sense they're using a key light, but it's soft. It's not a real high key light, but it's only one light. There's no fill. There's a key light to make it more dramatic so that the shadows are larger, and it just highlights the blood part and the hammer part of the picture.